My in-laws confessed their darkest secret in Chinese, not knowing I was fluent. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, heart hammering as my mother-in-law's voice carried through the doorway. She was speaking in rapid Mandarin to my father-in-law, her tone conspiratorial and excited. The job offer letter came yesterday, Chen Weiming was saying to her husband. The one from Microsoft. I threw it away before David could see it. My blood turned to ice. I'd been waiting 3 weeks for that response. Good, replied Chen Lijun, my father-in-law. The last thing we need is her getting some high-paying job and thinking she's worthy of our son. Did you tell David about the credit card story yet? Already done. I told him Sarah maxed out a secret card shopping for designer clothes. He was furious. Weiming's laugh was sharp and cruel. He actually apologized to us for her reckless spending. If only he knew she's never even seen those statements. The ceramic mug slipped from my fingers, but I caught it just before it hit the floor. For 8 months, my husband David had been growing increasingly cold and distant. 8 months of accusations I couldn't understand, fights that seemed to come from nowhere, and a creeping certainty that I was losing my mind. The marriage counselor appointment she scheduled for next week? Li Jun's voice was smug. I called and canceled it. Told them Sarah had decided to postpone indefinitely. Perfect. And I've been leaving her resume in the neighbor's trash can whenever she prints new copies. She keeps wondering why no one calls her back. Weiming's voice was getting closer to the kitchen. She looked so defeated yesterday when she checked the mailbox again. Like a little lost puppy. I slipped out the back door onto the deck, my entire body shaking. 3 years. I'd known David's parents for 3 years, endured their polite smiles and seemingly broken English whenever I was around. They played the role of traditional Chinese immigrants who barely understood American customs, nodding apologetically when I spoke too fast, asking David to translate simple phrases. It was all an act. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every time they'd whispered about me right in front of my face, they'd known I couldn't understand. Except I could. I'd been fluent in Mandarin since college, but David had never mentioned it to them. It simply never came up in conversation, and after that first awkward dinner where they seemed more comfortable speaking in Chinese, I'd stayed quiet to let them communicate naturally. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Can we talk when I get home? Mom told me about the credit cards. There were no credit cards. There was no secret shopping. There was no reckless spending. But there was a Microsoft job offer that could have changed everything, rotting in their garbage can while I questioned why no one would hire me. There were canceled therapy sessions while my marriage crumbled. There were stolen opportunities and fabricated stories and 8 months of gaslighting that had nearly destroyed my sanity. I looked through the kitchen window at Weiming, who was now cheerfully preparing tea like she hadn't just admitted to systematically sabotaging my life. She caught sight of me and waved, her expression shifting into the mask of confused concern she always wore around me. Sarah. How are you, dear? David working late again? Her English was suddenly broken and halting, each word carefully pronounced like she was struggling with the language. But I'd heard her speaking perfect, fluent English on the phone with her book club just last month. Everything was a lie. I forced a smile and waved back at Weiming through the window, my face feeling like a plastic mask. Hi, yes, he's working late on the Henderson account. She nodded sympathetically, maintaining that careful, slow cadence. Very hard. David worked too much. You lonely? The concern in her voice was so perfectly performed that if I hadn't just heard her laughing about my defeated expression, I might have actually felt touched. Instead, nausea rolled through my stomach as I watched her pour tea into delicate porcelain cups, the good china she only brought out when she was feeling particularly pleased with herself. I'm fine, thank you, I managed, stepping back inside. Just getting some fresh air. Li Jun appeared in the doorway, adjusting his reading glasses with the same gentle smile he'd worn at our wedding when he toasted our happy future together. He'd given that entire speech through David's translation, apologizing that his English wasn't good enough to express his feelings properly. The memory now felt like acid in my throat. Sarah, he said carefully, we worry about you and David. Maybe, marriage is difficult sometimes? The audacity was breathtaking. Here was the man who had literally just admitted to canceling our counseling appointment, now pretending to be concerned about our relationship problems that he had orchestrated. We're working through some things, I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. All marriages have challenges. Weiming nodded sagely, setting down her teacup. In China, we say, how do you translate, Li Jun? She turned to her husband, frowning as if searching for words. When tree is sick at root, branches cannot be healthy. Li Jun picked up the thread smoothly. Yes, yes. Sometimes problem is deeper than we see. They were tag-teaming me. After months of destroying my marriage from the inside, they were now positioning themselves as wise elders offering cryptic relationship advice. The performance was so seamless I wondered how many times they'd rehearsed this exact conversation. My phone buzzed again. Another text from David. Seriously, we need to discuss your spending. Mom showed me some receipts. Receipts. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. What receipts could Weiming possibly have fabricated? I hadn't made any large purchases in months. We'd been saving every penny for the down payment on a house, a goal that now seemed laughably naive given that my in-laws were actively preventing me from getting decent employment. Is everything all right, dear? Weiming's voice had shifted into that syrupy tone she used whenever she sensed weakness. You look pale. Just tired, I said. I think I'll head home. Of course, of course. Li Jun stood up, suddenly helpful. We tell David you stop by. Maybe this weekend, we all have dinner? Talk about things? The suggestion sent chills down my spine. A family dinner where they could plant more seeds of discord, feed David more lies while I sat there pretending not to understand their strategy sessions in Mandarin. How many times had they done this before? How many marriages had they sabotaged with the same methodical precision? That sounds lovely, I lied, grabbing my purse. I'll check with David about his schedule. As I headed for the door, I heard Weiming call out behind me, Sarah. Drive safe. Roads are dangerous when you cannot see clearly. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. The words could have been innocent concern about the evening fog rolling in from the bay. But the tone, there was something sharper underneath, like a blade wrapped in silk. When I glanced back, both of them were watching me with identical expressions of polite concern. But their eyes were calculating, measuring, like scientists observing a lab rat navigating a maze they designed. I had 12 hours before David came home expecting answers about credit cards that didn't exist. 12 hours to figure out how to save my marriage from the people who were supposed to love us both. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. I pulled into our driveway at 7:43 p.m., noting automatically that David's car wasn't there yet. He'd probably be at the office until at least 9, giving me time to think. But as I sat in the darkened garage, my phone rang. "Hey babe," David's voice sounded strained. "I'm heading home early. We really need to talk." My stomach dropped. "Of course. I'll be here." "Good. And Sarah?" "I stopped by the bank on my lunch break today." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind reeling. What could he have discovered at the bank? Our accounts were joint, he had access to everything. Unless. I sprinted inside and powered up our laptop, logging into our bank accounts with shaking fingers. Everything looked normal. Our checking account showed the usual transactions: groceries, utilities, gas. Our savings account was exactly where it should be, steadily growing toward our house fund. But then I noticed something. Our credit report monitoring service, we'd signed up 6 months ago when we started getting serious about buying a house. I clicked through to the detailed report and my blood turned to ice. There it was. A Nordstrom credit card opened 3 weeks ago in my name, with a $3,000 limit and a current balance of $2,847. I'd never set foot in a Nordstrom in my life. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely navigate the website. I clicked through to see the detailed transactions: designer shoes, handbags, jewelry, cosmetics. Someone had been very busy building a case against me, and they'd known exactly what would infuriate David most: frivolous luxury purchases while we were trying to save money. The account listed our home address, but the phone number was one I didn't recognize. When I called it, Wei Ming's voice answered on the second ring. "Hello?" I hung up immediately, my heart pounding. She'd opened a credit card in my name. That was identity theft, an actual crime. This had gone far beyond lying to David about my behavior. They were creating false evidence, building an elaborate framework to destroy me. I was printing out the credit report when I heard David's key in the front door. 8:17 p.m. He was 43 minutes early, which meant he'd left work the moment he'd spoken to whoever at the bank had confirmed the existence of the card. "Sarah?" His voice echoed from the entryway, tight with anger. In the office, I called back, shoving the printed pages into the desk drawer. I needed more time to figure out how to explain this without sounding completely insane. David appeared in the doorway still wearing a suit, his face a mask of controlled fury I'd only seen a handful of times in our 3 years together. "Want to tell me about the Nordstrom card?" "What Nordstrom card?" The question came out automatically, which was technically true. I'd only learned about it 17 minutes ago. "The one you opened 3 weeks ago. The one with nearly $3,000 charged to it." He pulled out his phone and started reading. "Giuseppe Zanotti shoes, $847. Bottega Veneta purse, $1,200. Chanel lipstick, $65. Should I continue?" Each item hit like a physical blow. "David, I swear to you, I have never." "Don't." He held up a hand. "Just don't. The bank showed me everything. Your social security number, our address, even your mother's maiden name as the security question. You want to tell me someone else did this?" The truth was right there on the tip of my tongue. Your mother opened this card. Your parents are systematically destroying our marriage. Everything you think you know is a lie. But how could I possibly make him believe that? Especially when I'd have to admit I'd been hiding my ability to understand Chinese for 3 years. "I need you to see something," I said, reaching for the desk drawer. But David was already walking away. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. We'll figure this out tomorrow." I sat alone in the office, listening to his footsteps on the stairs, holding evidence of a crime I couldn't prove and a truth I couldn't tell. At 9:34 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hope you enjoyed your shopping trip. A concerned family member." I stared at the text message until my vision blurred, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. They weren't just sabotaging me, they were taunting me. Wei Ming knew I had discovered the credit card, and she was confident enough in her victory to gloat about it. The sound of David moving around upstairs felt like nails on a chalkboard. Drawers opening and closing, the creak of the guest room bed frame. My husband of 2 years was sleeping in another room because his mother had committed identity theft and he believed I was a liar. I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that even David couldn't dismiss. By 11:47 p.m., I had a plan. I drove back to David's parents' house through empty streets, parking 3 blocks away and walking through the Chen's meticulously maintained neighborhood. Their house was dark except for the blue glow of the television in the living room, Legion's nightly ritual of watching Chinese news programs until well past midnight. I crept around to the side yard where I knew they kept their garbage cans. If Wei Ming had thrown away my Microsoft offer letter yesterday, it might still be there. Tuesday was trash pickup, which meant I had maybe 8 hours before the evidence disappeared forever. The first can was mostly kitchen waste and junk mail. The second contained something that made my blood freeze, a thick manila envelope with a Microsoft logo, addressed to me, torn open and discarded beneath coffee grounds and vegetable peelings. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. The letter inside was dated 6 days ago, not yesterday, like Wei Ming had said. She'd been sitting on this even longer than I'd realized. "Dear Ms. Chen," the letter began, using my married name. "We are pleased to offer you the position of senior software engineer with a starting salary of $127,000. $127,000. More than David and I made combined. This wasn't just a job, it was our future. The house we'd been saving for, the financial security we dreamed about, the chance for me to finally use my computer science degree instead of temping at insurance offices. They had stolen my future and thrown it in the garbage. But there was more. Beneath the Microsoft letter, I found printouts of emails from other companies. Amazon, thanking me for withdrawing my application. Apple, confirming my request to be removed from consideration. Google, expressing disappointment that I was no longer interested in the position. Withdrawal emails I had never sent, from an email account I didn't recognize. But when I looked closer at the account name, I felt sick. sarek.backup.2024@gmail.com. They had created a fake email address, close enough to my real one that companies wouldn't question it, and had been systematically sabotaging every job opportunity for months. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Enjoying your midnight snack? Garbage suits you. I spun around, scanning the dark windows of the house. Were they watching me? The living room television was still on, but I couldn't see any movement inside. Then I heard it, Wei Ming's voice drifting through a partially open upstairs window, speaking in Mandarin to someone on the phone. She's outside right now, digging through our trash like an animal, Wei Ming was saying, her voice bright with amusement. I told you she'd come looking eventually. Americans are so predictable. I pressed myself against the side of the house, straining to hear more. The credit card was genius, wasn't it? David completely believed it. And now that she's desperate enough to go through garbage, we can tell him she's having a mental breakdown. Who would believe anything she says after that? A pause. Wei Ming was listening to whoever was on the other end. Of course I got pictures, she continued. I've been watching from the bedroom window. David will be so heartbroken when he sees his wife rummaging through trash at midnight. Poor boy will probably agree to the divorce papers by next week. Divorce papers. My marriage wasn't just crumbling, they had already planned its ending. I crouched beneath the window, my heart pounding so loudly I was certain they could hear it upstairs. Wei Ming's voice continued, and I pulled out my phone, hands shaking as I started recording. The beauty is that we documented everything, she was saying. Photos of her going through trash, screenshots of the credit card bills, even that lovely picture I took of her crying in the grocery store parking lot last week. David's going to think his wife has had a complete psychological break. I had to bite my lip to keep from gasping out loud. That day at the grocery store, I'd broken down after another failed interview, sitting in my car wondering why no one would hire me. I'd felt so alone, so worthless. And she had been there, documenting my pain like it was entertainment. Yes, Li Jun already contacted David's divorce attorney friend, Wei Ming continued. What's his name? Marcus something. Marcus Liu. They're meeting for drinks Thursday to casually discuss options for men whose wives become unstable. Very subtle. Thursday was tomorrow. In less than 18 hours, my father-in-law would be planting the idea of divorce in David's head while I was still trying to figure out how to prove my innocence. The timing is perfect, Wei Ming's voice grew more animated. David's been working on that Henderson merger for months. He's stressed, exhausted, not thinking clearly. Men always make the worst decisions about women when they're overwhelmed at work. Li Jun learned that from his brother's situation back in Shanghai. Another pause. I pressed the phone closer to the window, praying the audio was picking up clearly. She's still down there, you know. Looking through more garbage bags like some kind of vagrant. I almost feel sorry for her, she actually thought she was smart enough for our family. Wei Ming's laugh was cold and sharp. David could have married that nice accountant girl, Jennifer Wu. Remember her? CPA, comes from good family in San Francisco, speaks proper Mandarin. But no, he had to fall for this white girl who thinks learning Chinese in college makes her cultured. My blood turned to ice. They knew. Somehow, they knew I spoke Mandarin. Wait, what? Wei Ming's tone shifted suddenly. What do you mean, how long have I known? I held my breath, pressing myself flatter against the side of the house. Of course I've known she speaks Chinese. Did you think I was stupid? I saw her college transcripts when I went through her papers last year. For years of Mandarin, Dean's List, study abroad in Beijing. The little spy probably understood every word we ever said. My entire body went numb. She had known all along. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every time they talked about me right in front of my face, it had all been deliberate torture. That's what made it so delicious, Wei Ming continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Watching her pretend not to understand while we discussed her flaws. The way her face would twitch sometimes when we'd say something particularly cutting, she has terrible control over her expressions. I thought back to all those family dinners, all the times I'd felt paranoid that they were talking about me. They were. And they had enjoyed watching me suffer in silence, too polite to reveal that I understood every word. She never said anything because she thought she was being respectful, letting us speak comfortably in our native language. Isn't that precious? American politeness is such a weakness. I had heard enough. More than enough. But as I started to move away from the window, Wei Ming's next words stopped me cold. Don't worry about the evidence. Even if she tries to tell David what we've done, who's going to believe her now? A woman who maxes out secret credit cards, gets fired from temp jobs, and rummages through garbage at midnight? David's already questioning her sanity. By next week, we'll have her committed for psychiatric evaluation. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering against the concrete foundation. Upstairs, Wei Ming's voice went silent. Then the bedroom light flicked on. I froze against the side of the house, my phone lying silent on the concrete beside me. The bedroom light cast a yellow rectangle across the lawn, and I could hear Wei Ming moving around upstairs, her footsteps quick and purposeful. Li Jun, she hissed in Mandarin. Wake up. She's outside. I heard something. I had maybe 30 seconds before they looked out the window and saw me crouched in their flower bed like a criminal. The garbage bags were scattered around me, evidence of my desperation spread across their perfectly manicured lawn. If they took photos of this scene, it would be exactly what Wei Ming had described to David, proof that his wife was having a mental breakdown. I grabbed my phone and the Microsoft letter, shoving both into my jacket pocket as I heard Li Jun's voice join his wife's at the window. Are you certain? He was asking. It could have been a cat. I know what I heard. And look, the garbage is everywhere. She's been here for at least 20 minutes, going through everything. I army crawled behind their neighbor's hedge just as the front porch light blazed to life. My heart was hammering so hard I felt dizzy, but I forced myself to stay low and move slowly. Any sudden movement would catch their attention through the living room's bay window. Should I call David? Li Jun's voice carried through the night air. Not yet. Let me get pictures first. David needs to see exactly how far she's fallen. Pictures. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows as Wei Ming's silhouette appeared at the upstairs window, phone in hand. The camera flash lit up the yard twice, capturing the scattered garbage bags and my obvious presence even though I was no longer visible. Perfect, she said. This is even better than I hoped. David's going to be horrified. I waited another 10 minutes before creeping back to my car, taking a circuitous route through 3 different backyards. By the time I reached the street where I'd parked, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. The recording was still on my phone, 13 minutes and 47 seconds of Wei Ming confessing to everything. Identity theft, sabotaging my job applications, planning my divorce, even having me followed and photographed. It was more evidence than I dared hope for. But would it be enough? I sat in my car for another 20 minutes, listening to the recording 3 times through my earbuds. Wei Ming's voice was crystal clear, her admissions unambiguous. She had confessed to multiple felonies while gloating about destroying my marriage and my sanity. The problem was David. After months of systematic manipulation, would he believe the evidence or dismiss it as fake? His parents had been so careful, so methodical in their character assassination. They painted me as unstable, dishonest, reckless with money. Now they'd have photos of me going through their garbage in the middle of the night. My phone buzzed with a text message from David, can't sleep. Keep thinking about the credit card. We'll talk in the morning, but I think we need to consider a separation while you get help. While I get help. They'd already won. I drove home through empty streets, my mind racing through possibilities. I could play the recording for David, show him the stolen job letters, explain everything. But Wei Ming was right, who would believe such an elaborate conspiracy? Especially from a wife who'd just been caught rummaging through garbage like a paranoid lunatic. When I pulled into our driveway at 1:23 a.m., every light in the house was on. David's car was there, but so was another vehicle I didn't recognize, a black Lexus sedan parked behind his Honda. Through our living room window, I could see David sitting at our kitchen table with 2 other people. As I got closer, my stomach plummeted. Li Jun was there, still in his pajamas and robe, looking appropriately concerned and disheveled. And across from David sat a woman I'd never seen before, middle-aged, professional, with a briefcase open beside her chair. I checked the time again. 1:26 a.m. What kind of meeting required a briefcase at nearly 2 in the morning? I crept closer to the kitchen window, positioning myself where I could hear but not be seen. David was speaking, his voice strained with exhaustion and frustration. I just don't understand how it got this bad without me noticing, he was saying. The credit cards, the job interviews she claimed to go on but apparently never did, and now Mom says she was going through their garbage tonight? The woman's voice was calm, clinical. These kinds of breaks from reality often happen gradually, then accelerate rapidly. The important thing is that you're recognizing the signs now, before anyone gets hurt. Before anyone gets hurt. I pressed closer to the window, my blood turning to ice. Dr. Rachel Morrison, Li Jun was saying in his careful, accented English. Very good psychiatrist. She helped my friend's daughter when she how do you say? Episode? A psychiatrist. They hadn't just called David about the garbage incident, they brought a psychiatrist to our house at 1:30 in the morning to evaluate my mental state. Without me present. Without my consent. The involuntary hold is only 72 hours, Dr. Morrison was explaining. Long enough to do a proper evaluation and get her stabilized on medication. Given what you've described, the financial deception, paranoid behavior, inappropriate late-night activities, I think we have grounds. Involuntary hold. They were planning to have me committed. I stumbled backward from the window, my vision blurring with panic. An involuntary psychiatric hold. They were going to have me locked up based on lies, and once I was committed, who would believe anything I said? I'd be the crazy wife who claimed her in-laws framed her with an elaborate conspiracy. My phone was still recording. Without thinking, I started a new recording and crept back to the window. The procedure is straightforward, Dr. Morrison was saying. 2 qualified witnesses can petition for an emergency evaluation if they believe someone poses a danger to themselves or others. Mr. Chen, you've documented erratic spending. Your father-in-law witnessed her destroying property. Going through garbage, Li Jun corrected sadly. Very disturbing behavior. In our culture, this shows complete loss of face, of dignity. David rubbed his temples. How long before? How does this work exactly? I can have the paperwork filed by 9 a.m. The police will escort her to Valley Springs Medical Center for evaluation. Given her resistance to getting help voluntarily, this may be the kindest option. My hand shook as I held the phone steady. They'd planned this perfectly, David exhausted and overwhelmed, Li Jun playing the concerned father-in-law, and a psychiatrist ready to sign commitment papers based on manufactured evidence. She'll hate me for this, David said quietly. Dr. Morrison's voice was professionally reassuring. David, you're potentially saving her life. Paranoid episodes can escalate quickly. The credit card fraud, the midnight prowling through neighbors' property, these are classic signs of a psychological break. Is there no other way? David asked. What if I could convince her to see someone voluntarily? Li Jun leaned forward. David, my son, we tried to help Sarah many times. But she denied everything, make excuses. Sometimes love means making hard choices. The manipulation was breathtaking. Li Jun's broken English was more pronounced than usual, playing up the grieving father-in-law role. And Dr. Morrison had clearly been briefed extensively, she knew details about the credit card that should have been private between David and me. The involuntary hold isn't punishment, Dr. Morrison continued. It's protection. For her and for you. I've seen cases like this escalate to violence when the paranoid delusions intensify. Violence. My chest tightened. They were painting me as potentially dangerous now. What about work? David asked. Her temp agency, our landlord. Medical privacy laws protect her, Dr. Morrison said smoothly. You can simply say she's dealing with a family emergency. Most holds are resolved within 72 hours once proper medication begins. Medication. They wanted to drug me into compliance before I could tell anyone the truth. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. In 7.5 hours, they'd file the paperwork. The police would come to our house, probably while I was sleeping, and take me away in handcuffs. By the time I was released, if I was released, David would have filed for divorce and Wei Ming's victory would be complete. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number again, sweet dreams, Sarah. Enjoy your last night of freedom. She was watching. Somehow, Wei Ming knew exactly what was happening in my kitchen right now. I spun around, scanning the dark street for her car, but saw nothing. Then I realized Li Jun was here, but where was Wei Ming? She could be anywhere, monitoring everything, orchestrating this final move like a chess grandmaster. I had less than 8 hours to prove my innocence to a husband who was already signing commitment papers with a psychiatrist his father had conveniently produced at 2 a.m. The recording on my phone was damning, but would David even listen to it now? Or would he dismiss it as more evidence of my paranoid delusions? I needed something bigger. Something undeniable. Something that would destroy them before they could destroy me. I sat in my car outside our house, watching through the kitchen window as my husband planned my involuntary commitment with a psychiatrist and his father. The surreal horror of it made my hands shake as I held my phone, the recording still running. But then something clicked. Wei Ming wasn't here, she was somewhere else, monitoring this entire situation. And she'd been texting me in real time, which meant she had to be getting updates from someone. Li Jun didn't have his phone out, and David's was face down on the table. Which meant there was another way she was watching. I thought back to 3 months ago when Wei Ming had insisted on bringing us a housewarming gift, a beautiful Chinese tea set that came with an ornate wooden display stand. She'd been very specific about where it should go, fussing over the placement until it sat directly across from our kitchen table with a perfect view of the entire room. The tea set that was currently 12 feet away from my husband as he discussed having me committed. My stomach lurched as I remembered how Wei Ming had taken forever to set it up, adjusting the angle multiple times while Li Jun distracted us with stories about their immigration to America. I thought she was being perfectionist about the feng shui. She'd been installing surveillance equipment. I crept around to the side of the house where our bedroom window faced the backyard. David and I had never gotten around to installing proper curtains, just temporary blinds that left gaps along the edges. If Wei Ming had been recording us for months, she'd have material that went far beyond sabotaging my job applications. Our intimate conversations. Our fights. David expressing doubts about his parents that he'd never voiced directly to them. Private moments that could be edited and manipulated to support any narrative they wanted to create. My phone buzzed again, having second thoughts. Sarah? It's too late now. David's already made his choice. The smugness in that text made my blood boil. But it also confirmed what I suspected, Wei Ming was monitoring everything remotely. She was probably sitting in a parking lot somewhere, watching a live feed of my husband signing papers to have me locked up. I needed to get back inside and confront them with a recording, but first I had to find that surveillance device. If I could prove they'd been spying on us, it would change everything. Even David couldn't dismiss illegal surveillance in our own home. I used David's hidden spare key to slip in through the front door, moving as quietly as possible. Their voices carried from the kitchen, discussing logistics of the commitment process. Dr. Morrison was explaining something about medication protocols while Li Jun made concerned grandfather noises. The tea set sat exactly where Wei Ming had placed it, the carved wooden stand angled perfectly toward our table. I ran my fingers along the base, searching for anything that felt wrong. The wood was smooth, traditional, except for a small section near the back that felt slightly different, a tiny raised circle about the size of a pencil eraser. I pressed it gently and felt it give way like a button. The section slid aside, revealing a sophisticated camera lens and what looked like a wireless transmitter. The device was professional grade, probably motion activated, with a view that captured our entire kitchen and dining area. Sarah? David's voice cut through the house like a blade. I spun around to find all three of them standing in the kitchen doorway. David looked confused and worried, Dr. Morrison appeared clinically interested, and Li Jun's expression had shifted into something I'd never seen before, cold calculation replacing his usual gentle demeanor. What are you doing? David asked, his voice strained. I held up a camera device, my hand trembling. Ask your father what this is. Li Jun's face went completely blank. For the first time in 3 years, his careful mask of confused immigrant grandfather had disappeared entirely, replaced by the expression of someone who'd just been caught in an elaborate lie. The silence stretched for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Then Dr. Morrison stepped forward, her voice professionally concerned. Sarah, I think you should put that down. Hidden cameras, paranoid accusations, this is exactly the kind of behavior that worries us. Dr. Morrison's calm dismissal of the surveillance device sent rage coursing through my veins. I held the tiny camera higher, making sure David could see it clearly in the overhead light. This is a wireless camera, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Your mother installed it 3 months ago. She's been watching us, recording our private conversations, probably streaming everything live to her phone right now. Li Jun finally spoke, but his English was suddenly perfect, no trace of the halting accent he'd maintained for 3 years. Sarah, you're clearly having a psychotic episode. Breaking into our home, going through our garbage, and now fabricating elaborate conspiracy theories about surveillance equipment. The transformation was so jarring that David actually stepped backward. His father's voice was crisp, educated, completely fluent. The broken English had vanished like it had never existed. Dad? David's confusion was evident. You're English. Dr. Morrison smoothly interjected before Li Jun could respond. Patients experiencing paranoid breaks often force others to behave differently, to react to their accusations. It's not uncommon for family members to feel they need to defend themselves more articulately when confronted with delusions. But I was already pulling out my phone, fingers flying across the screen to access the recording from tonight. David, I need you to listen to something. Your mother confessed everything. The credit cards, the job applications, all of it. Sarah, please, Dr. Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to dealing with difficult patients. These devices can be purchased online for $12. Anyone can buy them and claim they found them somewhere significant. She was good. Wei Ming had chosen her psychiatrist well, someone who could rationalize away any evidence I presented, who could make my proof sound like manufactured paranoia. But then David held up his hand, silencing Dr. Morrison. Wait. Dad, answer me directly. How long have you spoken English this well? Li Jun's face cycled through several expressions before settling on resignation. David, son, you don't understand the full situation here. How long? David's voice was sharp now, the tone he used in business negotiations when someone was lying to him. 43 years, Lee Jun admitted quietly. Since before you were born. The admission hung in the air like smoke. David turned to stare at me, then back at his father, the pieces clicking together in his mind. 3 years of family dinners where his parents had needed translation. 3 years of treating me like I was the outsider who couldn't understand their cultural conversations. Play the recording, David said suddenly. I fumbled with my phone, hands shaking as I found the file from 2 hours ago. Wei Ming's voice filled our kitchen, speaking in rapid, fluent Mandarin about credit cards and divorce papers and having me committed. What is she saying? David asked. Lee Jun opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. She's saying she opened the Nordstrom credit card in my name. She's been intercepting my job applications for 8 months. And she's been planning this entire night, the psychiatrist, the commitment papers, all of it. David's face went white. Translated exactly. She says, the credit card was genius, wasn't it? David completely believed it. And now that she's desperate enough to go through garbage, we can tell him she's having a mental breakdown. I paused the recording, watching David's expression shift from confusion to horror. Dr. Morrison stepped forward again. David, this could be any conversation. Without understanding Chinese myself, I can't verify what she's claiming the recording contains. Patients often hear what they want to hear. But Lee Jun was staring at the phone like it was a loaded gun. He knew exactly what was on that recording because he'd been part of the planning. His perfect English facade had crumbled, and now his careful expression of grandfatherly concern was dissolving too. There's more, I said, advancing the recording. She talks about creating fake email accounts to withdraw my job applications. She mentions taking pictures of me crying in parking lots. She says you already contacted a divorce attorney named Marcus Liu. David's head snapped toward his father. Marcus Liu? You called Marcus Liu about my marriage? The guilty silence from Lee Jun was answer enough. Lee Jun's face had gone completely gray, but before he could respond, my phone rang. Wei Ming's contact photo filled the screen, a smiling family portrait from last Christmas where she had her arm around my shoulders like we were best friends. David grabbed my phone before I could react. Answer it. Put it on speaker. My finger trembled as I accepted the call and hit the speaker button. Wei Ming's voice filled our kitchen, sharp with panic. Lee Jun, what's happening? The feed cut out 20 minutes ago, and Sarah's car is in the driveway. Did she find the camera? The silence was deafening. David stared at the phone, then at his father, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that looked like grief. Lee Jun? Are you there? Wei Ming's voice was getting more frantic. The psychiatrist was supposed to have the papers signed by now. Why isn't David responding to my texts? Dr. Morrison moved toward the door, her professional composure finally cracking. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps I should go. Nobody leaves, David said, his voice deadly quiet. He was still staring at the phone. Mom, it's David. A sharp intake of breath from the speaker. David. Where's your father? Is Sarah there? Don't listen to anything she says, she's having a complete breakdown. Mom. David's interruption was gentle but firm. I found the camera. The line went completely silent. Even the background noise from Wei Ming's end, car sounds, maybe, disappeared as if she'd covered the phone. I don't know what you mean, Wei Ming finally said, but her voice was different now. Smaller. The competent manipulation from moments before had evaporated. The wireless camera you installed in our tea set. The one that's been recording our private conversations for 3 months. David's voice was getting stronger, more authoritative. Sarah also has a recording of you confessing to credit card fraud, identity theft, and sabotaging her job applications. David, listen to me carefully, Wei Ming's voice shifted into the tone she used when he was a child and had disappointed her. Sarah has been lying to you for months. She's mentally unstable. She probably planted that camera herself to create this story. How did you know Marcus Liu's phone number? David interrupted. Another silence. Lee Jun was standing frozen by our kitchen counter, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. What? Wei Ming's voice was confused now. Dad told me Marcus moved to Portland 2 years ago and changed law firms. He told me last month that he'd lost touch with him completely. So how did you know his current contact information when you told Sarah that Dad was meeting him for drinks on Thursday? I stared at David, realization dawning. He'd been listening more carefully to my recording than I'd thought. Wei Ming had made a crucial mistake. She'd referenced information that Lee Jun had supposedly lost access to years ago. Your father found his new information online, Wei Ming stammered. Marcus Liu doesn't advertise family law anymore. He switched to corporate tax law when he moved to Portland. The only way you'd know he was still taking divorce cases is if you'd spoken to him directly. The trap was closing. David's analytical mind was working through the inconsistencies in his parents' story, finding the loose threads that unraveled everything. Dr. Morrison cleared her throat. David, I think there may have been some miscommunication about tonight's consultation. Perhaps we should reschedule. How much did they pay you? David asked bluntly. Dr. Morrison's face flushed red. I don't know what you're implying. It's 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday night. You brought commitment papers for a patient you've never evaluated, based solely on second-hand reports from people who aren't mental health professionals. That's either malpractice or bribery. Through the phone speaker, we could hear Wei Ming's car door slamming. She was coming here. Wei Ming's car door slam through the phone speaker sent ice through my veins. She was coming here, probably speeding through the empty streets, ready to salvage what she could of her crumbling plan. I could picture her behind the wheel, mind racing through new lies, new manipulations to try on David. How long before she gets here? David asked, his voice tight. 15 minutes, Lee Jun answered automatically, then seemed to realize what he just revealed. His shoulders sagged in defeat. She was parked at the Starbucks on Morrison Avenue. Watching the house feed on her laptop. 15 minutes. David pocketed my phone and turned to Dr. Morrison, who was edging toward our front door with her briefcase clutched against her chest. Dr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to explain exactly how this consultation was arranged. Who contacted you first, when, and how much you were paid for a 3 a.m. house call. This is highly irregular, she said, fumbling with her car keys. I was simply trying to help a family in crisis. Bullshit. David's language made me blink. He never swore in front of his parents. You brought pre-filled commitment papers to my house. That means you'd already diagnosed my wife without meeting her. You want to explain how that's ethical? Lee Jun suddenly straightened up, and I saw a flash of the man who'd raised David, intelligent, strategic, used to being in control. David, you need to understand something about marriage. About compatibility. Your mother and I have seen things that worried us. You committed identity theft, David cut him off. Multiple felonies. You created fake email accounts to sabotage Sarah's career. You installed surveillance equipment in our home without consent. His voice was rising with each accusation. You weren't worried about my marriage, you were destroying it systematically. We were protecting you. Lee Jun's composure finally cracked completely. You think we wanted to do this? Sarah was going to get that Microsoft job, make more money than you, start thinking she was too good for our family. American women always leave when they think they've outgrown their husbands. The raw honesty was more shocking than the lies had been. David took a step back, staring at his father like he was seeing a stranger. You sabotaged a $127,000 job offer because you were afraid my wife might become successful? You don't understand, Lee Jun pressed on, desperate now. In our culture, family harmony requires balance. Sarah was going to upset everything. Already she was getting confident, asking questions about traditions, suggesting we didn't need to visit every weekend. She suggested we visit every other weekend instead of every weekend, David said slowly. And you decided to destroy her life over that? Dr. Morrison had made it to our front door, but David's voice stopped her. Doctor, if you leave now without explaining your involvement, I'm calling the state medical board at 9 a.m. Your choice. She turned around, her professional mask completely gone. Mrs. Chen contacted me 6 weeks ago. She said her daughter-in-law was showing signs of severe mental instability and her son was too emotionally involved to see it clearly. She paid my consultation fee in advance, $2,000 cash. 6 weeks ago. This wasn't a desperate last-minute plan. Wei Ming had been arranging my commitment for over a month, probably since she realized I might eventually discover their sabotage. She provided documentation, Dr. Morrison continued, her voice defensive. Credit card statements, photos of erratic behavior, even recordings of Sarah talking to herself in parking lots. Recordings? My voice came out as a croak. Lee Jun looked away. The camera had audio pickup. Range of about 50 feet. They'd been listening to my private phone calls. To me crying in my car after failed interviews. To me talking to my sister about how isolated and confused I felt. They'd recorded my pain and used it as evidence that I was mentally unstable. Jesus Christ, David whispered, running his hands through his hair. How long has this been going on? 2 years, Lee Jun admitted quietly. Since right after your wedding. 2 years. Our entire marriage had been under siege from the moment we'd said our vows, and I'd never known it. Every argument that seemed to come from nowhere, every time David had been inexplicably cold or distant, every moment I questioned my own sanity, it had all been orchestrated. Through our front window, I saw headlights turning onto our street. Wei Ming was here. Wei Ming's headlights swept across our living room wall as she pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see her sitting in her car for a moment, probably trying to figure out her next move. The woman who'd spent 2 years systematically destroying my marriage was now trapped, but cornered animals were often the most dangerous. David, Lee Jun said urgently, whatever she says when she comes in, you have to remember we did this because we love you. Everything we did was to protect you from making a mistake that would ruin your life. Protect me? David's laugh was bitter. You turned my wife into a stranger. You made me doubt her, made me cruel to her. I've spent 8 months treating Sarah like she was lying to me about everything. Dr. Morrison shifted nervously by the door. Perhaps I should leave before. You're staying, David said firmly. I want witnesses to whatever's about to happen. Wei Ming's car door slammed again, followed by the sharp click of her heels on our front walkway. Even at 3 a.m., she'd taken time to change clothes. I could see through the window that she was wearing her navy blue power suit, the one she wore to important meetings. She was dressed for battle. The front door opened without a knock. Wei Ming had kept our spare key. David, sweetheart, she called out in English, her voice carefully modulated to sound concerned and maternal. I was so worried when your father didn't answer his phone. Is everyone all right? She appeared in the kitchen doorway, took one look at the 4 of us standing there in tense silence, and I saw her quickly assess the situation. Her eyes flicked to the dismantled tea set, to Dr. Morrison's guilty expression, to her husband's defeated posture, and finally to my phone in David's hand. I see Sarah has been telling stories, she said calmly. David, you look exhausted. This has been such a difficult time for everyone. Mom, David said quietly, I heard the recording. Wei Ming's face didn't change, but I caught the tiny pause before she responded. What recording, dear? The one where you confess to opening credit cards in Sarah's name. The one where you laugh about sabotaging her job interviews. The one where you discuss having me meet with divorce attorneys. David's voice was getting steadier with each word. The one where you talk about having her committed so no one would believe her when she tried to tell me the truth. David, you can't possibly believe. I also found the camera you installed in our tea set. The one you've been using to spy on our private conversations for 3 months. Wei Ming's composure cracked for just a moment, a flash of pure rage crossing her features before she regained control. That's ridiculous. Sarah is clearly having some kind of psychotic episode. She's probably planted evidence to support her delusions. But Lee Jun stepped forward, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Wei Ming, stop. He knows everything. Lee Jun, be quiet, she snapped, her careful maternal tone disappearing entirely. David, your father isn't thinking clearly. The stress of Sarah's behavior has been affecting his judgment. The stress of Sarah's behavior? David repeated slowly. You mean the behavior you fabricated? Wei Ming straightened her shoulders, and suddenly I recognized the expression on her face. It was the same cold calculation I'd seen during her phone conversation, when she'd been gloating about my downfall. She was switching tactics. Fine, she said, her voice turning crisp and businesslike. Yes, we intervened in your marriage. And we'd do it again. The simple admission hit the room like a physical blow. Dr. Morrison actually gasped. We've watched you become miserable for 2 years, Wei Ming continued, addressing David directly. Sarah was all wrong for you from the beginning. Wrong background, wrong priorities, wrong everything. But you were infatuated, and infatuation makes men stupid. David's face went completely white. You destroyed her career. You committed crimes. We corrected a mistake, Wei Ming said coldly. Your mistake. And if you had any sense, you'd thank us for saving you from a woman who was never worthy of our family's name. The mask was completely off now. This was the real Wei Ming, calculating, ruthless, and utterly convinced that she was justified in everything she'd done. And she still thought she could win. I stood frozen as Wei Ming's words hung in the air like poison. The woman who had smiled at our wedding, who had given tearful toasts about gaining a daughter, was now openly admitting she'd spent 2 years trying to destroy me because I wasn't worthy of her family name. Not worthy? David's voice was dangerously quiet. Sarah has a computer science degree from UC Berkeley. She speaks 3 languages fluently, including yours. She's kind, intelligent, and she loved this family enough to let you treat her like garbage for 3 years. Wei Ming's laugh was sharp and dismissive. She speaks Chinese like a college student. Textbook phrases with terrible pronunciation. And that Berkeley degree? She's been working temp jobs for 8 months because no real company wants her. Because you sabotaged every opportunity. David exploded. The Microsoft offer was for $127,000. Amazon, Google, Apple, she had interviews with all of them. Interviews she never would have gotten without lying on her applications, Wei Ming shot back smoothly. David, you're being naive. Women like Sarah exaggerate their qualifications, oversell their abilities. We simply ensured that reality caught up with her pretensions. The gaslighting was breathtaking. Even faced with recorded evidence of her crimes, she was still trying to rewrite the narrative, still insisting that I was the problem. But then David pulled out his phone and started dialing. What are you doing? Wei Ming asked, her composure slipping slightly. Calling the police, David said simply. Identity theft is a felony. So is credit card fraud. And installing surveillance equipment in someone's home without consent. David, no. Wei Ming's voice shifted back toward pleading. Think about what you're doing. These are your parents. We raised you, sacrificed everything for you. Are you really going to destroy your family over some woman you've known for 3 years? Some woman. After everything, I was still just some woman to her. Stop, Li Jun said suddenly, his voice cutting through Wei Ming's manipulation. Just stop. Everyone turned to look at him. His face was gray with exhaustion and what looked like shame. David, call the police if you want. We deserve it. Li Jun's voice was steady now, resigned. Your mother is right about one thing, we did this because we love you. But we were wrong. Completely, terribly wrong. Li Jun, shut up, Wei Ming hissed, but he continued. We were afraid, he said, looking directly at me for the first time all night. Sarah, we were afraid you would take David away from us. American wives, they don't understand family obligations. They move across the country for careers, they don't visit parents, they put their marriage before their family. I never tried to take David away from you, I said, finding my voice. I suggested we visit every other weekend instead of every weekend because David was exhausted from work. That's what this is about. One conversation about boundaries? Li Jun nodded slowly. That conversation made Wei Ming panic. She said it was the beginning of the end, that you'd slowly isolate David from us completely. So you decided to isolate him from me instead, I said. Dr. Morrison suddenly stepped forward, her briefcase clutched against her chest. I need to leave. Now. This consultation was clearly based on false information. Doctor, David's voice stopped her again. You were planning to have my wife committed based on lies. You brought papers to take away her freedom based on fabricated evidence. I was given documentation that seemed legitimate, Dr. Morrison said defensively. Mrs. Chen was very convincing. Mrs. Chen is a criminal, David said bluntly. And you were going to be an accessory to kidnapping. Dr. Morrison's face went pale. I need to contact my attorney. You do that, David said, then turned back to his mother. Mom, I'm going to ask you one direct question. Do you have any remorse at all for what you've done to Sarah? Wei Ming straightened her shoulders, and I saw the truth in her eyes before she even spoke. My only regret, she said coldly, is that it didn't work fast enough. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Li Jun stared at his wife in horror. David's finger moved toward the call button on his phone. David, wait, Wei Ming said quickly, her tone shifting again. Before you do something you'll regret forever, there's something else you need to know about your precious Sarah. My blood turned to ice. What else could she possibly have? David's finger froze over the phone screen. What are you talking about? Wei Ming's smile was sharp and triumphant. Your wife has been lying to you for 3 years, David. Every single day. Mom, stop, David said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. After everything they'd put us through, she was still managing to plant seeds of doubt. She speaks fluent Mandarin, Wei Ming announced. Perfect, native-level Mandarin. She's understood every word we've ever said about her, and she never told you. The room went completely silent. David turned to look at me, his expression unreadable. Is that true? He asked quietly. My throat felt like sandpaper. Yes. 3 years, Wei Ming pressed on, sensing weakness. 3 years of letting you translate simple phrases for her. 3 years of pretending to be respectful while she was actually spying on our private family conversations. That's not what happened, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Isn't it? Wei Ming's voice was getting stronger, more confident. David, ask her about the dinner last Christmas when we discussed your grandmother's will. Ask her if she understood when we talked about leaving you the house in San Francisco. David's face went pale. That conversation had lasted 2 hours, all in Mandarin, about family property and inheritance decisions that would affect our future. He'd promised to translate the important parts later, but we'd gotten distracted and he'd forgotten. You understood that whole conversation? David asked me. Yes, but... She knew we were planning to give you the house, Wei Ming continued relentlessly. She knew about the $400,000 inheritance. She's known for months that her financial future was secure, and she never said a word to you about it. Because it wasn't my place to bring up your family's private financial discussions. I protested. But I could see David processing this information, his analytical mind working through the implications. From his perspective, I'd hidden a major language skill for 3 years and secretly listened to conversations about inheritances that directly affected our marriage. What else? David asked Wei Ming, and my heart sank. The real reason she learned Chinese wasn't cultural appreciation, Wei Ming said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It was calculation. She researched our family before you ever introduced her. Found out about our business, our property investments, our net worth. That's completely untrue, I said frantically. David, I learned Mandarin in college because I was interested in international business. I met you at Jake's birthday party completely by accident. Did you? Wei Ming asked. Or did you know Jake worked at David's firm? Did you know David would be there? This is insane, I said, but doubt was creeping across David's features. Check her old Facebook messages, Wei Ming suggested casually. I'm sure you'll find very interesting searches in her browser history from 2019. Searches about the Chen family business. About David Chen, software engineer. About property records in San Francisco. My mouth fell open. You went through my computer? 2 years ago, Wei Ming admitted without shame. Found quite a lot of interesting research, David. Your wife was very thorough in her background investigation. The truth was mundane. I'd looked up David's LinkedIn after we started dating, like any normal person would. I'd Googled his name to make sure he wasn't a serial killer. But Wei Ming was spinning normal dating behavior into evidence of gold-digging calculation. David, I said desperately, you know me. You know that's not who I am. But he was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, like he wasn't sure he knew me at all. 3 years of lies, Wei Ming said softly. David, that's who you married. Someone who could look you in the eye every day and lie about something so fundamental. Dr. Morrison had been edging toward the door throughout this entire exchange, but now she stopped. The doubt in David's face was giving her an out, a way to salvage her professional reputation. David, she said carefully, deception about language abilities could indicate deeper psychological issues. Pathological lying often starts with small omissions that escalate over time. And just like that, Wei Ming had turned the tables again. Somehow, my failure to mention a language skill had become evidence that I was the real manipulator in this situation. I watched the doubt spread across David's face like poison, and something inside me snapped. For 3 years, I'd been polite, accommodating, trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law. For 8 months, I'd questioned my own sanity while they systematically destroyed my life. And now, even with recorded evidence of their crimes, Wei Ming was still winning. But she'd made one crucial mistake. You want to talk about lies? I said, my voice deadly calm. Let's talk about lies, Wei Ming. I pulled out my phone and switched to Mandarin, my pronunciation crisp and perfect. David, your mother thinks my Chinese sounds like a college textbook. Should I tell you what she really said about you last Christmas? Wei Ming's face went white. Sarah, don't. I continued in Mandarin, addressing David directly while staring at his mother. She said you were weak-willed like your father, that American education had made you soft, and that any woman could manipulate you because you were too sentimental to see people clearly. David's head whipped toward Wei Ming. You said that? She also said, I continued, still in perfect Mandarin, that she was ashamed you weren't more successful at 30, that your software engineer salary was embarrassing compared to her friend's son who became a doctor, and that marrying me was just another example of your poor judgment. That's enough. Wei Ming snapped in English. Oh, we're just getting started, I said, switching back to English. David, should I tell you what she said about your presentation anxiety? How she told Li Jun that your fear of public speaking was pathetic and unmanly? David's face was cycling through shock, hurt, and growing anger. Mom, is this true? Your wife is twisting things, Wei Ming said quickly. Cultural context is different. Should I play the recording from your phone call tonight? I interrupted. The one where you called David emotionally weak and said he'd believe whatever his mommy told him to believe? Li Jun spoke up suddenly. Wei Ming, you said that? Or maybe David would like to hear about how you've been telling your book club friends that he's a disappointment, that you wish you'd pushed him harder to become something more prestigious than a computer worker. Stop, David said quietly, but he was looking at his mother now, not me. I pulled up another recording on my phone. This is from 6 weeks ago, when you thought I was at the grocery store. I hit play. Wei Ming's voice filled the kitchen, speaking rapid Mandarin. David has no backbone, just like his father. Look how easily he believes everything we tell him about Sarah. If he was a real man, he would have investigated for himself instead of blindly trusting us. The silence was deafening. You want to talk about who's been lying for 3 years? I said to Wei Ming. I learned Chinese because I loved language. You've been pretending to love your son while systematically destroying his confidence and his marriage. David set down his phone without calling the police. Instead, he walked to the kitchen counter and started pulling papers out of a drawer, our lease, insurance documents, bank statements. What are you doing? Wei Ming asked nervously. Removing both of you from our emergency contact lists, David said calmly. Changing our mailing address so you can't intercept any more mail. And first thing Monday morning, I'm filing a restraining order. David, you can't mean that, Li Jun said. I absolutely mean it. David's voice was steel. Sarah, pack whatever you need for tonight. We're going to your sister's house. Wei Ming stepped forward desperately. David, please think about what you're doing. We're your family. No, David said, looking directly at his mother. Sarah is my family. You are strangers who happen to share my DNA. He turned to Dr. Morrison, who was still hovering by the door. Doctor, I strongly suggest you return whatever money they paid you and forget this consultation ever happened. As we gathered our things, Wei Ming made one last attempt. You'll regret this, David. She'll leave you eventually. American wives always do. David paused in the doorway, then looked back at his mother with an expression of complete disgust. You know what the difference is between Sarah and you? In 3 years, she's never once asked me to choose between her and my family. You've spent 3 years trying to destroy the person I love most. We left them standing in our kitchen at 4:17 a.m. on a Thursday morning. 6 months later, David and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with my family and the friends who actually loved us both. I got the Microsoft job. They were very understanding when I explained the mail delivery issues that had delayed my response. Wei Ming and Li Jun were convicted of identity theft and sentenced to community service and restitution. Dr. Morrison lost her license. And David's Mandarin is coming along beautifully. He wanted to make sure no one could ever lie to him in another language again.